up on these things. The next bullet is related to the integrated report call for data. So I just want to put a plug in for this. This is every 2 years. There's a call for data where we request that people have third-party data and they want to submit it to us for evaluating relative to our 303D listing, as well as just the state of the waters in the state. And so that's open until April 2nd. So if you go to this link, it allows you to kind of submit your data and information. And then the last one on the bottom is just a link to our 319 grant program. And that's, these are small grants. We wish we had more money, but these are small grants that are focused on water quality improvement activities. So I think I will just pause there and stop because that's the end and I don't want to take up too much time.
All right, thank you very much, Steve.
Sure.
And yeah, we will be having, we have some planned questions for all of the panelists when this is over. This part is really just a brief introduction to each agency.
Yep.
So I believe next on the list is Thomas Whittington from Oregon Department of Forestry, and he is an ODF water quality specialist. Did I get the right person for this presentation?
I believe so. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction and the invite to hopefully shed some light on Oregon Department of Forestry's regulatory authority and the department itself. So I'll give a quick overview of the department. I think that's a good place. We do lots of different things. So yeah, first of all, again, Thomas Whittington. I'm the water quality specialist for the private forest division at the Oregon Department of Forestry. And just a little more background for myself. I've worked at ODF for over 21 years and I've been in many different roles, including in the field in Clackamas County as a stewardship forester. I've been a road specialist in the state forest program, and I've also active in the fire program, assisting with some of the aviation resources we have around the state. I guess I'll overview the department just so you have some context about what we do. You can keep it on that slide for now if you want. Thank you. Oregon Department of Forestry protects 16 million acres of Oregon's public and private forest lands from wildfire, manages 800,000 acres of Oregon state forests, enforces the Oregon Forest Practices Act, which I'll talk about regarding water quality, and assists private forest landowners and works with urban communities to help sustain Oregon's most lived-in forests, which would be the urban forests. And a little more on privately owned forests. They cover 10.3 million acres in Oregon, which is 34% of the state's forested lands. The private forest division works with landowners to help them reach their goals while protecting and improving natural resources. For myself, I work in the private forest field support unit, which seeks to provide customer service to department field personnel. So everybody out on the ground, our stakeholders, landowners, operators, and the public in the administration of the Forest Practices Act. So that's one of our main functions. Now I can go to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so the Oregon Department of Forestry is responsible for administering the Forest Practices Act, which I may refer to FPA. I'm going to try to say it out as much as I can, but I'll probably use FPA for short on most of this on non-federal forest lands. Water protection is a major emphasis of the Forest Practices Act. The statutes and rules relating to water protection speak to broad water protection goals, water classification, riparian area management, and to provide overall protection of the waters of the state during forest management activities that are adjacent to water. And this all happens while encouraging the continual growing and harvesting of trees. So that's kind of right out of the Forest Practices Act, one of the main themes you'll see in the act if you ever get a chance to read it. Again, so there, get a little more of the details on the administration of the FPA. The department has over 50 stewardship foresters and hopefully some more soon. We're in the middle of hiring some right now to help administer the FPA. And they're located throughout the state to provide technical assistance and regulatory oversight of forest management activities relating to the FPA again. And so for my role, myself, main job is to provide technical guidance to the field staff out there administering the FPA, and especially issues relating to water quality. And another big piece of my job is interagency coordination on those issues. For all issues really, and then anything relating to forestry and water, coordinate with the other natural resources agencies that many of them are represented here. With that, I think we'll keep moving ahead. That's a brief overview of my role and the department in the FPA. We'll talk about some more later. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Thomas. And I had inadvertently skipped over Kirk because I thought I didn't see him here, but I think that maybe one of the phone numbers on here is Kirk. So we will go back to his presentation if he's here. So is one of those phone numbers Kirk Cook?
Could we double check who is 503-310-3527?
That's Dan Kramer.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the next presenter in that case, who is Amy Landvoigt, who is from Oregon Water Resources Department. And we have met Amy before, not too long ago, actually. She is the local water master. So Amy, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'm the District 20 Water Master for the Oregon Water Resources Department. The list I put together for today's presentation is really what I do, kind of in a very specific way. Our agency, I think somebody mentioned our Oregon Integrated Water Resources Strategy. That's higher level in our agency that I'm not that involved with. So I know we have some bigger picture things that happen in coordination with other agencies. But as far as, what I do, this is just kind of a list of general things that I do. It's pretty broad variety of things I do. But we really, the way that we deal with water quality is just from a volume perspective. We really deal more in water quantity. Our agency is tasked with allocating water rights and protecting water rights. And some of those water rights are in-stream water rights that are base flows that are left in stream for fish. And since fish can't pick up a phone and call me, I go out. For the purpose of this conversation, what I do is I do a lot of stream flow measurements in the summertime to see where those base flows are. And then when they reach those flows, then I regulate off upstream junior users. So I get a lot of phone calls from people, I think just because my title makes it appear that I know everything about water, which I don't. But I get a lot of, I do a lot of coordination with other agencies. So I'm really kind of more looking forward to hearing about what some of these other agencies do so that I can help direct some of these calls that I get, more specifically. So, but basically the main thing I would get phone calls about is illegal uses out of streams.
All right, thanks very much, Amy. And we've got one more speaker before we go to the questions, and that is Ben Walczak, who we all know is our district fish biologist with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Ben.
All right. Oh, good. That mute button is always pesky in the afternoons. Yeah, so I work for ODFW as a district fish biologist. And just kind of the high level, our mission as an agency is to protect and enhance fish and wildlife and their habitats for use and enjoyment by present and future generations. So that's also kind of at odds. It's a tough mandate to kind of meet. We work really collaboratively with other agencies and stuff. We are not a regulatory agency is the important takeaway from this slide. as a district fish biologist, I work within a fish division. We have a fish division, a wildlife division, and a habitat division. So fish is directly responsible for regulating harvest of fish. And you can see, and then everything else there, a lot. So it's a big sprawling throughout the whole state, kind of a side of our agency. It's much bigger than our wildlife side. And water quantity and quality program is housed within that. And it's directly involved with water issues. And kind of, they really work a lot with water right applications that impact streams, hydroelectric applications, and in-stream flow studies. You know, if I could get the next slide, that would be great. So they basically have a three-pronged, three-legged approach. They really want to prevent further impairment of habitat. So they participate, comment, and engage with ODFW's authority on water rights. So that's a consultation with water resources under our Division 33 rules and hydro, kind of the two mesh points there. On the second leg is restore flows through community engagement. And that is like place-based planning, aquatic habitat prioritization, water transactions, and working with non-governmental agencies to facilitate those kind of engagements. And the last leg is to protect critical areas. So we do that with in-stream flow studies, applying for new in-stream water rights, and aquatic habitat prioritization. And the third slide, if you would mind, is what I do. And I am the generalist in this. So I kind of do a little bit of everything. Basically in my area that I work, which is the North Willamette Watershed District, I'm responsible for kind of fish related activities between the Columbia to the north, down to around Salem to the south. The Willamette River is my east boundary, or my west boundary, and my east boundary is the crest of the Cascades. So a lot of people, a lot of different problems, and work closely with that water quality program staff to kind of assess permits, provide the on the ground information they need, work back and forth with them. It's collaboratively to fill out a permit. The same as I'll reach out to other agencies to kind of get their feel on those permits as well. And that's really what I do a lot of in how I fit in the whole agency sphere, is I'm the generalist on the ground where the policy and the everything meets. All right, that's really what I have.
All right, thanks very much, Ben. All right, so we have a list of about 6 questions, and David Bugney and Todd and I are going to take turns asking the questions. And I think we'll try just letting the panelists, you know, if you have a response, just go ahead and speak up. And if that doesn't work out, then we'll change it and we'll wind up calling on you. But I think just letting you speak is a good way to go. Yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
Yeah, so I guess Kirk Cook is apparently not on. I work in the same natural resources section as him. Of course, I haven't seen him in a year. Would you like me to kind of wing it and talk about the PSP program for a couple of minutes?
Sure, if you're willing to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'll put my pesticide hat on.
All right, go
I
ahead.
haven't heard an update in quite a while. So this is kind of high level information. It's a partnership. The Pesticide Stewardship Partnership Program is a, oh yes, and if anyone local has an update about what's going on in the Clackamas PSP, that would be great. So it's a partnership between DEQ and ODA, and a bunch of other agencies and partners are involved. It's a voluntary effort to monitor, identify problems with pesticides, work with landowners on solutions, and keep monitoring and see those improvements. And the DEQ and ODA both have a web page. I couldn't actually find a map, but currently there are 9 PSPs, including the Clackamas, and I think the Clackamas has been one for quite a while. And there's also a fairly new stakeholder advisory group for the PSP that got started maybe a year ago, and that was kind of a big deal. Yeah, it started before COVID because I remember hearing it being talked about in CubeLand, and it was kind of a big deal to get that started up. And they also coordinate locally to do pesticide collection events so that folks can get rid of that jug of something in the back of a, barn. I think I'm going to call it, that's my elevator speech about the PSP program. And if somebody local wanted to just kind of chime in with, looks like Susie might be able to say a little more.
Sure. Hey, Cheryl, thanks for pinch hitting that. All right, I'll tell a little bit more local stuff about the PSP. So we are Pesticide Stewardship Partnership is what the PSP is. Part of our consulting group for the PSP is a Clackamas technical working group, which we get together with some producers and with other agencies and organizations like USGS, DEQ. We talk about pesticide issues within the watershed. It helps, the information gathered there also helps warrant where I do my sampling. So the sampling that I do that is submitted to the DEQ is actually funded and created by the ODA. So we're looking at 135 different pesticides and their constituents in my collections. We're dealing with 4 to 5-ish pesticides of concern. So the PSP is the group that helps to get that wrangled and angled and then put together public outreach. One of them is now our Clackamas strategic plan, which we are, we had a couple hiccups for, but hopefully we'll have an initial strategic plan put together by June. That's when our due date is going to be, and we're going to be, and we're outreaching specifically now to Christmas tree growers and some of our key sub-watersheds, which is, let me see if I can get this straight, North Fork, Deep Creek, Sebin Creek, and Noyer Creek. So that's a little bit about the PSP and the strategic plan. Hope that helps.
All right, thanks, Susie. And Susie does keep us updated on her activities with the PSP. So we're fairly familiar with that, I would say. All right, so I'm going to start with the first question. And again, speakers, please chime in with your responses. First question is, what would you consider to be the pertinent water quality parameters that pose serious issues, physical, chemical, and biological, in terms of both aquatic life and then human drinking water? So which parameters do you think are, the most important ones we should be paying attention to? If nobody answers, I will call on you.
That's a big question.
I know.
They're all important, right? All the parameters are important to both aquatic life and human life. It sort of depends on where you are. And again, I should first say, one of the positions that's part of my team is a basin coordinator that focuses on the Clackamas, Sandy, and Molalla areas, and it's currently vacant. I do have somebody, Roxy, who's covering part-time for some of those duties, but it's about to get recruited for, so hopefully soon you'll have a great person to come and talk to you in more detail. But I do believe, for example, I think in the Clackamas, I think there's some challenges with temperature, so certainly there are temperature boundaries for fish or other aquatic life that can be challenging. I think it depends. There's, I think, some bacteria issues depending on where you are. So bacteria, when you talk about human health, I mean, from either contact or ingestion standpoint can pose some challenges. And more broadly, I mean, I think, there's things that are kind of either emerging or we're discovering more about. So like from a human health perspective, I think folks are probably pretty familiar with some of the harmful algal blooms that have been in the media, and we've been tracking a little bit more closely. And so I think there's some kind of considerations there for humans and water supplies. So it really depends. And we could go on and talk about all sorts of different things. So, and maybe some other folks here have some more local knowledge on the clackamas. So I apologize that these people have a lot more local expertise here, I'm sure.
Anybody else
So-
want to chime in? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted Steve to go first because I figured he'd cover it. And I'm not actually a water quality specialist. I just play one on TV. My background is not in water quality, but I learn as I go. And so I think the one thing that I'm going to add, so I completely agree with everything that Steve said. And in addition, we have an updated Mercury TMDL, total maximum daily load, from EPA, and DEQ and others did most of the work, but then EPA changed it a little bit. So that's brand new. And the Clackamas biennial review that I mentioned of the Ag Water Quality Area Plan that's coming up within a couple of months, that's going to be the first ODA area plan where we need to work out what are we going to say about mercury. And Steve's like smiling and nodding because we've had all these emails going back and forth between DEQ and ODA, which is an example of another answer to another question about interagency coordination. So in a couple of weeks, we've got a staff and manager level combined meeting with ODA and DEQ to have this first conversation about what are we doing with mercury. I just know we need to count better and we need to do more. So I'll add that.
Good addition.
All right. Any other answers before we go on to the next question? All right, Todd has the next question for you.
It looked like Susie unmuted herself because she made a comment in the chat, and I wanted to have her say something about that if she could.
I'm kind of just playing that on TV too, like Cheryl, but one of the concerns we have post-fire, we've had a lot of concerns with algal blooms and we call them HABs, harmful algal blooms in the Clackamas. Post-fire, there's a pretty sizable concern for increased HABs in the Clackamas, as well with defoliation and as well with some of the fire retardants that have been coming off of the burned areas. So there's that. Of course, I always want to say our pesticides of concern are a huge issue because those affect our aquatic macroinvertebrates and our lower tributaries.
Great, thanks, Susie. And that does touch on the next question. And as you, those of you who can answer, with all of these persistent issues in water quality, are there some locations in the Clackamas River that those issues are most persistent?
I could start with this. From my perspective, the mouth is always the most important because it's the lowest down. And then after that, I would say anything in Deep Creek or Clear Creek.
Yeah, and I think Clear Creek is now online to join the SIA coming up, which is going to give it more attention.
I was just going to say, as I recall, again, I'll have to check with my experts, but I think lower part of the drainage has more of the challenges related to kind of, as I mentioned before, I remember temperature and bacteria in particular in those areas might be kind of a focus area.
And speaking from the pesticide end of things as well, again, not an expert, but that's what I sample for. Lower tributaries are a big deal. We've got you know, a lot of agriculture, varied agriculture down there. So we have a lot of different pesticides being used. Many of them are persistent. And then we also have in the Rock Creek area, that's a biggie, you know, a lot of development. So a lot of household pesticides and waste and turbidity coming off of Rock Creek as well.
David Bugney, I think it's over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. This is marvelous. This next question, some of you have already answered to some degree, but let me expound upon it a little bit. So the basic overriding question is, what can each of your agencies do to protect water quality? So subparts of that are, and I'll give you an example to help clarify this. Where do your responsibilities begin and end? That's kind of the first part. And then how do your agencies work together? And we're talking about that a little bit, where you have continuing and or overlapping responsibilities at a particular site. So what made me think of this question was, out in our area, what happens often is that a site that was historically in forest gets converted over to Christmas trees or something like that. So it goes from a ODF jurisdiction to an ODA jurisdiction, and each of them has different, you know, rulemaking, enforcement, and criteria, and these sorts of things. And we've had situations where, for example, the forest requirements are much more stringent, or more stringent than the agricultural requirements, or, for example. And so what I'm getting at is, how do you folks work together to make sure that, you know, the site is properly protected, and how do your responsibilities begin and end and that sort of thing? If that makes sense.
Well, I could start, since a lot of this relates to ODA specifically. So I'm just going to, so I've got the written question, so I didn't have to kind of memorize what you just said. Looking at the email from Cheryl. So where do my agency's responsibilities begin and end? So yeah, it's agriculture, but it's also basically anytime there is a property with any type of agricultural activity or farm animals. So the rural residential folks with the 3 horses, our program applies. It doesn't have to be like an active commercial farm operation. And also farmland that's not currently in farm use, our program applies there. And if someone has land that's zoned for forestry, but they are running their cows under the trees, our program applies. We both, ODF and ODA, both have jurisdiction if there's an agricultural activity occurring on forest land. Same with urban. If there's an agricultural activity within a city, and there are some farms, like in the Portland area, there are a couple of farms tucked in, our program applies there, and then we have to coordinate with the city depending on where the, you know, the stormwater issues. In terms of, you know, addressing the forest conversion specifically, probably about 10 years ago, ODF and ODA worked out how to do this and set up systems for communication and who does what and how it works. And currently in that blue region that I'm covering, if there is a forest conversion, I'm actually not the person, because I've got a double region and a lot of work. So there are a couple of pieces of work that are peeled off and given to somebody else. So Kevin Fenn, our compliance lead, he is actually taking any incoming forest conversions and either doing it himself or assigning it to other staff. But basically, when we get a notification from a landowner that they are doing a forest conversion, then they're supposed to send us their plan, and we review it and we look to see where the streams are. And depending on if there are any streams on the property, generally we go out and do a site visit with the landowner and explain how the ODA program works and make sure that what they're doing will keep them in compliance with our rules. So that's kind of how the forest conversion works. And I'll just go ahead and mention also, if we have a compliance case, then we will coordinate. If there's another agency that has jurisdiction, if it may also be a pesticides issue, sometimes we coordinate internally. If it's on a CAFO, confined animal feed operation, we'll coordinate with those ODA people. Occasionally, we coordinate on a compliance case with ODFW, occasionally with ODS, and occasionally with DSL. So, each case is different. So we do coordinate whenever another agency may have jurisdiction and we have a compliance case. And I think I'll stop there and let others chime in.
Thanks, Cheryl. It's good. You kind of hit some of the key points on the forestry conversions. Those are always something that are kind of for our stewardship foresters can be a watch out situation, as I'll call it, is something that can be take a lot of time to make sure it goes smoothly. And we do have formalized agreements, like Cheryl mentioned, but so how to do that. So when we have forestry conversion that we know of, that's one of the key words there, that sometimes landowners aren't as forthcoming as you'd want them to be. But of course, we have our notification system. Often if it's a forest land conversion, they're going to do a harvest. So we're out there and we have jurisdiction on any forest management activity. And so we'll keep that jurisdiction relating to the FPA as long as that use remains in forestry. So that, just trying to make the example. So say with somebody harvests, they say they intend to convert to maybe to ag use. We're gonna maintain jurisdiction over that until that use is actually complete. So that may be immediately or maybe a couple years. So as long as somebody harvests, they still have to follow the FPA as far as reforestation until that use is converted. So in the case of reforestation, it's 2 years that they have to get seedlings in the ground. So we're tracking that. So we're making sure there's a smooth handover is what I'm trying to say, as far as we know it, just because somebody says it, or, even in the agreement, we try to make sure that if we do know that's going to be a conversion, that we're letting all the other agencies know, including ag, ODFW, if there's an issue there. Department of State Lands is another one. And DQ is the other one as well. So that we're making sure that those other agencies are aware that this is going to be, coming out of forestry and going into some other use. So that's really key. And I'll just add one more thing that, for the department, or, as far as private forest land, like Cheryl mentioned, it's the activity, right? So if it's a forest management activity on forest land, that's where our jurisdiction with the FPA lands. So just want to make, that's kind of the case for us, as far as anything that we set the standards for activities involving establishment, management, or harvesting of all the trees on Oregon's non-federal forest lands. And for water specifically, it includes protection of the waters of the state that may be impacted by that activity. So I'll stop there, and if there's questions or clarification needed, let me know.
I just want to say that forestry conversion is something that I've been previously unaware of, and I'm glad to know about that. That's a kind of common complaint I get, is that people clearing the land, and so it'll be nice to have a couple of you guys that can reach out to. But most of my coordination is with Ben. Ben and I work together a lot in the summertime. And Roxy, somebody mentioned Roxy. She reached out to me a little while ago. So I think ODFW and DEQ are probably the two biggest ones for us, because most of our surface water applications, those agencies have an opportunity to chime in on parts of the application.
My agency's role in a lot of this, because the Clackamas has a lot of Endangered Species Act fish, which is my expertise, is to just comment and provide the best available data to fish presence. So the protection is there in the permits.
I guess I could chime in a little bit here. So from DEQ, I guess it really depends on the scale and scope, and we have touch points with our regulations and department orders at all levels. So it could be anywhere from an individual that needs a permit to do something to cities and counties and municipalities that might be, responsible designated management agencies to fulfill particular requirements. So it really depends. I'm trying to figure out how to answer that easily. And then the next part with the conversions, I guess one other conversion I think you were just talking about too was where DEQ might get involved from forest conversion is if it's being turned into developable land, right? So as we know, we like to build houses and things as humans, and as population increases, we've seen more of that. So similar to what was discussed before, we coordinate pretty closely with the stewardship foresters and often our stormwater program or other areas where it might be an activity that needs to have coverage under a permit. We work with them. And then unpermitted activities, again, that just sort of depends on the situation. And we follow up and work with a whole variety of people on those.
All right, I guess we'll move on to the next question then. This one is about monitoring. The question is, where is water quality monitoring currently adequate versus are there areas that need more information? So realizing we can kind of predict some things about water quality based on land use, but are there areas that have important questions that monitoring could answer? Do you do any sort of random monitoring to try to detect violations? What else can you tell us about monitoring?
Well, I could go first, I guess. So let me see where to start. So we do, like I mentioned earlier, one of the groups that is part of DEQ is at our laboratory. It's the water quality monitoring section. Aaron Borisenko is the manager of that section, and they do all sorts of monitoring across the state at different scales and scopes. So for example, we have 144 site long-term ambient monitoring stations that we've had monthly data collected back since like the 50s in some cases. Those are kind of anchor sites on large rivers to really get at high level kind of status and trend information. We do probabilistic modeling, monitoring. So there could be areas throughout the state where we are doing studies looking at water quality, looking at macroinvertebrate populations. Sometimes we do coupled with habitat and other surveys in those areas. We do coastal monitoring, we do beach monitoring. So there's a variety of different, we could go on. There's also special studies that go on for different durations. There's groundwater monitoring. So there's a variety of things that we do at DEQ just to sort of either answer very specific questions or track broader questions. I think one of the things with monitoring, I'm a huge supporter of monitoring. I think, the more information we can have that is tangible and of quality level to help us answer questions and give us some direction is extremely beneficial. I think what we recognize is that there's lots of different groups out there. So any way we can kind of partner with one another and kind of help fill in those gaps and gather and talk through like what are the particular questions we have in different areas and help one another sort of design appropriate studies to collect that information to help answer those specific questions. That's probably the best way in my mind to do it. And we do like HAZs monitor. There's a bunch of, like I said, there's a ton of stuff, so I won't go into it, but Aaron Borisenko, he'll be a great contact for you at our laboratory. And then, like I said, I apologize. As soon as we get a basin coordinator, that'll be another good contact. Again, the person will be spread pretty thin amongst multiple areas. But again, I know Karen Williams had worked in that role in the Clackamas for a number of years. Christy Asplund was in that position. Again, now it's vacant. So hopefully that's a good initial contact, I would say, as part of a DEQ team that would be helpful to help kind of have those conversations and navigate that stuff with y'all.
I guess what I was thinking when I developed this question was from a learning standpoint, as you've gone about and assembled this body of knowledge, just like you've described, which is, very good. From a learning standpoint, from a sensitivity standpoint, where have you found areas that based on what you've learned, the data you've collected, you've analyzed, that you say, okay, we need to shift gears here a little bit and we need to study this area versus this area, or we don't really need to put our resources maybe in this area, but maybe more in this area. So are there things like that afoot that may result in little change in direction in our basin?
From an ODFW perspective, yes, we are very interested in temperature as it relates to habitat fragmentation for things like bull trout in the upper basin. As a really good example of as we face climate change, that habitat might get more fragmented, and then you're going to see those fish suffer. There's all kinds of things like that where temperature is really at the forefront of what we're thinking about. It's a pretty simple, well, it's something we're looking at that will have changes relatively soon, I think.
So I'm going to chime in here also, yeah, when ODA works in partnership with ODFW, we're kind of mindful that the Venn diagram there is largely temperature. And since there's a lot of focus on riparian restoration and shade and temperature, that's definitely a key parameter for us. And ODA has actually been funding some temperature monitoring, but due to COVID-related budget cuts, that is ending. And I don't think it was in the Clackamas. So a couple of other things. We do not go, ODA does not go and sort of randomly collect water samples and look for problems. We don't have the capacity. The program wasn't set up that way. But when we do a compliance case, depending on what the problem is, like if it's a big manure pile near the stream, then we do sample above and below, when we do the compliance investigation. And then when we go back out again and the landowner says, yeah, I fixed it, then we'll sample again just to show that there's not a problem anymore. So we do specific as needed, or nutrients, or whatever the problem may be, sediment or surrogates for sediment. And then so one other thing is the strategic implementation area that is starting up in Clear Creek. The funding for the SIAs includes $25,000 for monitoring, and that can be used up to a 10-year period. And it's not really enough. We know $25,000 isn't enough to monitor everything that you should monitor. But one of the key things that we're doing, this was a long-running conversation between DEQ and ODA, is that we need to be able to tie changes on the ground with changes in the water. So it's easy to count fence posts or trees or manure storage sheds, but how's that working out? How are the changes, restoration projects, projects that address other resource concerns, how is that linked to improvements in the water itself? So that was part of the purpose of strategic implementation areas, is to deliberately tie those two things together. So nobody's got the resources to tie them together everywhere. And there certainly are other places and other mechanisms for tying together water quality monitoring with on-the-ground implementation. Some groups will do that on their own. Some of the SWCDs do that. But specifically, every SIA has that monitoring. The monitoring is a required component of an SIA. And when that strategic implementation area gets going, then I think Brenda is still the lead on that one, even though she's not your regional person anymore. She will continue to be the lead on that SIA. And she along with the SWCD will convene a monitoring group to get together virtually, of course, and figure out a monitoring strategy, like what data are there in Clear Creek? What are the parameters of concern? What should we be monitoring? And I know we're going to be looking at having all SIAs in the Willamette include TSS, total suspended solids, because that is a surrogate for mercury. And so we might as well include that, you know, we'll get that information where we can.
I have a question.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. This may be for Amy, but I suspect certainly for all the other agency folks here, DEQ, ODA, Forestry, as it relates to temperature, climate change, and so forth. One thing I learned almost accidentally when I was at the Water Resources Department was that water masters had made myriads of measurements over many years at many locations. And associated with the gauging stations, this one's obvious, they measured temperature of the water and temperature of the air. And so there might have been 12 such measurements a year, maybe. But the most important one, and the most underutilized one, I think, is what was called miscellaneous measurements. Now, Amy, maybe these miscellaneous measurements have now been tabulated in the database, but when I was there, they had not been, and they all had these temperature measurements of the water and of the air. And there were thousands of them. So I suspect there's, if it isn't incorporated already, there's a phenomenal database there that's just ripe for picking. Amy?
Yeah, I'm unmuting. Yeah, I would agree. That is an interesting question. It would be interesting to go back. I know that the way our database, our internal database, where we log all those, where we log all of our, water master activity for the year, that changed. And so right now, some of the older stuff isn't available, but I think they're working on integrating it so that we're going to be able to see the new stuff and the old stuff. But I'm going to look into that and find out what of that is available to the public. I'm not always sure what amount of that data is available to the public. But yeah, I agree. It's there and it would be interesting.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. All I'm suggesting is if the miscellaneous measurements, and that's the critical one, haven't been picked up, I mean, they're easy to ignore. There is at least valuable temperature data there over many, many years at many, many locations. And
Sure.
So as you take a look at that, I'd ask you to see if you can find out if it's been incorporated. And if it has, great. If it hasn't, don't trash it.
Oh, no, we would never get rid of measurement data. No, definitely
You
not.
should have seen me. I trashed many records at Water Resources and was kicked around for that. So, but I did not trash the miscellaneous measurements.
All
No.
right.
Yeah, that's a great comment, John. Thank you for that.
So I wanted to just jump in for a second. If those are just single measurements that may be made at any time of the day, I don't think temperature, we call those a grab sample. The temperature grab sample, because the water temperature and air temperature change so much over the 24-hour cycle, and never mind the month, et cetera, I don't think that's actually very useful. I think DEQ really can only, and Steve, please jump in if I'm speaking out of turn, but my experience is that DEQ can only use temperature data that's from a continuous logger that's sitting in the stream and collecting, recording temperature throughout the day, like every 30 minutes, or I don't know how often it is, but throughout the day.
Beginning in the 1930s, I'm sure they did not use continuous loggers, and I'm sure they don't now, especially for the miscellaneous measurements. But that said, it is a vast resource that just might be useful.
All right, we're almost out of time. Technically, we are out of time, but because we've got everybody here, I was wondering if we could go through our last two questions kind of briefly and then ask if the speakers have additional comments to those questions, if maybe they could email them to Cheryl. But go ahead, Todd, on question 5, and we'll just ask for a real brief answer.
Okay. Thanks, Gail. So this one has to do with enforcement, and does your agency enforce water quality regulations? And in doing so, what advice might you have for a watershed council when we suspect or see a water quality violation? What should we do? And further along that line, are there policy development needs that your agency needs to have regulated or incorporated into policies so that there is further enforcement that your organization can do?
All right, I'll pop onto this one, ODA. So yeah, and I can give these answers briefly. If someone is concerned about a potential water quality violation on agricultural lands, you can very easily find our complaint form on the on our website, or email me and I will send you the complaint, or call me and I'll get you set up with the complaint. But our complaint process has to be signed by the complainant. If you want to be an anonymous if you want to submit an anonymous complaint, you can do that through the link that Steve provided to DEQ. So he had that complaint or concerns link. You can go there and be anonymous that way, and then it gets forwarded to us anonymously, and we don't know who complained. And then part B, I think our program works pretty well for enforcement. I think we have what we need. So I'll stop there.
Thank you.
So as I can chime in here really quickly. So how does our agency enforce water quality regulations? Well, through a variety of ways. Like I mentioned before, we have permits at different scales and scopes, and our expectation is whoever is the holder of that permit is going to be in compliance with that. And so we have a variety of ways of ensuring that. I mean, we have reporting requirements. We do planned inspections and unannounced inspections. We follow up on complaints. There's a variety of ways that we work on ensuring compliance with folks. We issue other department orders. Those are all enforceable. So depending on the particular situation, we certainly want to work with folks. And I think oftentimes people are just unaware or need some guidance on how to do things. Other times, not so much. So we take whatever tools are necessary to move that forward. If you see suspect a water quality violation, similarly, I already sent that before, and I totally apologize. I tried before to copy and paste that slide into the chat, and it wasn't working. So maybe if Cheryl or Gail, I can't remember who has it right now, if you want to send that to folks, because those were some good links for people, and I apologize, but there's a link there. There's some other phone numbers. Oh, if it's a spill with like oil, there's an OWRD number, which you can also call. So it sort of depends. And similarly to what Cheryl said, if depending on what the complaint is, we look into it, and we often work with other jurisdictions on that as well. So if it's a city, a county, or somebody else that might have authority, a Department of Agriculture, others. So I think I'll leave it at that. I don't know if I have a good answer for the B. I'll let other people talk.
For forestry, I'll just jump in real quick. I think it's similar, depending on if you think it's a forestry related activity. There's a couple of different ways you could file a complaint or make sure that we're aware of it. So you could contact the local office. Again, that's Malala for the Clackamas. Mostly it's the Malala field office. And our stewardship foresters, they get complaints quite frequent, and they'll make sure to investigate those, or if it's not related to forestry, make sure it's forwarded on to the correct proper agency, whether that's DEQ or ODA or maybe DSL even. But yeah, so depending on activity, it's another avenue. And the other option also is I believe on our website, there's a general email for like ODF info. I believe it's on our main page, and we've gotten complaints that way as well. So for that, a couple different ways to contact us directly, and we will try to investigate as best we can and pass it off if it's not forest practices related. As far as the other part of that question, our Board of Forestry continually evaluates forestry issues, and when it's warranted, we'll make adjustments to the rules and go through rulemaking. And again, the board has historically relied on science and public input to do that and develop new rules. So I'll leave it there and let somebody else.
Thank you.
All right, Dave, did you want to ask the last question real briefly, quickly?
You bet. So the last question, it's kind of a sum up, and so I'll ask it and I'll just give you an example. So where do we go from here? Next steps in order to address recurring water quality problems if they exist within the basin from a point pollution source. So for example, without naming any names or anything, we have one of our fellow board members who lives downstream of some folks that continually have an agricultural operation where there most likely are high bacterial counts, low dissolved oxygen counts, these sorts of things due to manure and whatnot. And they just, it's just been a situation where it just keeps it chronic. And so if you have situations like that, not necessarily like that, but what can a person do?
ODA, give us a call.
Yeah, if it's just chime in. I mean, obviously, I'm not sure of the specifics of that, but certainly, Cheryl, there's a bunch of folks in their organization, Kevin and others, a whole bunch of people that follow up on complaints. So.
All right, well, thank you so much to all the panelists for taking your Thursday evening to spend with us. We really, really appreciate it. We value your time. So thank you from the Clackamas River Basin Council. We have your contact information now, so I hope you won't mind if there are follow-up questions or issues that come up. We may contact you again in the future. Thanks again. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank
Take care.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Great
you.
job. Thank you.
All right, and for continuing our board meeting, we are ready to break up into committees. And I'll let each committee decide if they need to take a break. And let's see, I believe we have until, is it 8:10 for committees? 8:10, so we're a little short on time. We took a little longer for that panel, but since we had everybody here, I just thought we'd go ahead and do that. So I don't know if it's Cheryl or Adam who's going to break us up into committees. But let's
Cheryl's doing that now.
All right, and I'll see you all back at 8:10.
It's I've been doing other things.
Uh-oh.
So if you'd like to chat for a moment, I'll get all these assignments happening.
Or this might be the time for our bathroom break.
I was wondering if anybody heard the, I was listening to the radio and somebody was talking about eDNA, where they're taking water samples and then the environmental DNA, and whether, and I was trying to figure out, so whose responsibility would that be, or whose organization or state organization would that be, or is that under research and university?
Yeah, that's an OSU researcher, I believe. Yeah, Cheryl shared that article in OPB. And in the article, they were working on the North Santiam River. But it sounded like it's a research project between OSU and perhaps ODFW. And then maybe they'll develop a program out of that that can extend to other river systems.
I saw the email and I had read through it. I didn't have time to open it today. And then, but coming home, listening to OPB, I heard it. So thank you.
The eDNA equipment was actually developed by a private group, the same company that developed the the electrofishing equipment so many years ago. And so they rent out their units and assist many groups to do that data collection. And I know the Johnson Creek Watershed Council just got a grant to test a number of tributaries in their watershed for different species. So it's available, and they're super helpful, the people that developed it. It's really cool technology.
Interesting to know that how the cost is going to change over time, because it seems to me with something like this, you could, if they can do eDNA for macroinvertebrates and all that, all those types of species in the creek, it could be it'd be a boon. I mean, for as far as getting information, data without having to rely on, a lot of labor. And so you could probably get a lot more wealth of knowledge if it's going to be accurate.
Yeah, they have to develop the sampling ability for different species one at a time. And so it kind of depends on who's put forward the funding to look at, lamprey or different fish species.
I mean, I read a link to the original report that was in the journal, scientific journal. And from what I understood out of it, it's pretty heavily in the genetic side, but they had over 900 species already cataloged. So
oh, really?
That's a pretty sizable amount. And
I didn't realize that much.
And they had what they did was they tested not just on the Santiam, but they had tests all over Northwest Oregon. And so I think this could be something that really could develop into something pretty cool.
Yeah,
well, we're ready for breakouts.
Okay.
All right.
There you go. Hmm.
Am I the only one here? We're the only ones here and it's recording.
That's funny.
Everybody else is still in waiting for them to get kicked back. And we're like, we're done. We're done.
Yeah.
We're going back.
Dave didn't even make the leap with us.
He did. I see him, but he's not.
Okay.
He lost his camera in the meantime, I think.
Okay.
See, I have a new baby. See?
Cute.
Are you still there?
Yeah, we're here. We're in the main room, but there's nobody here.
What are we supposed to do?
We could play like tic-tac-toe or something.
We could also adjourn.
Yeah.
And we still have to do our reporting to the rest of the group.
Well, if you guys have got something else to do, I'll wait.
It's getting late. Come on, people.
Yeah, the baby's gonna wake up soon from her nap. Then I'm gonna have to deal with that. So
Go ahead, Aaron.
no, she's still asleep. We're not going there yet.
Oh, all right. How old is she now?
Almost 10 months.
Oh, time goes by quickly.
Yes, it does.
Can't disagree with that one, huh?
Nope.
Yeah. So, was that your first or second child?
It's our first.
First?
Yep. Never planned for that to go like that.
You couldn't have dreamt it, huh?
Nope. We've been married for 15 years and waited all this time to screw it up right at the end. It's a happy screw up.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It
How many
is.
kids do you have, Dave?
Pardon? I have two. They're all, one of them's almost 50. And one's 45.
Okay.
So they live in, my son lives up in Bainbridge Island.
Oh, nice.
And my daughter lives in South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
She works at, she's in charge of the food facilities for Winthrop University.
Oh, okay.
She couldn't get me any tickets. So anyway, I can't imagine what we're doing here.
We're waiting for everybody to come back. They like to talk a lot in their groups.
Well, there's only, yeah, but the deal was 10 after.
I know. They just won't stop gabbing.
Okay, they need to stop gabbing. Is it just us in here?
Yeah, like it didn't kick people back into this room. You had to make the choice yourself.
We're here.
You had a little bit more time to discuss.
We gotta go.
So
Where in the
Right.
cute kid on
Listen,
your list?
we're going to change our name to the Fiscal Gaggle.
Gaggling, huh? And we gave Bill a new name. We gave Bill a new name that is Time Traveler because I pulled him out of one committee to another.
Or you just send send his video send his video to one group and his phone to the other group.
Ooh, be tricky. Do we still have a group we're waiting for, or did people?
I don't know. We're about ready to adjourn. So if you want to report,
hold it.
Looks like we have everyone.
Go.
Do
All right,
need a motion?
We
I
do
second the
want
motion. They're out of control.
All right, everybody.
Oh.
I need my gavel here. All right, let's get a report from each committee and see if we can end this meeting on time.
What?
I said, let's do our reports so we can end this meeting on time. You go ahead, Dave. We're going to hear from finance. The finance gaggle is first.
Yeah, all right. Then we don't have to wait for the rest of them.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be good sports.
All right. Well, hey, go ahead.
Oh, you ready for my report?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We discussed something that we distributed a month or so, a couple of months ago, dealing with our I got my note here. We're looking at our goals that we started and we were doing some work on, and we interrupted by a number of different things. So we're going to bring those back up, dealing with our goals. In particular, where there's some specifically, we're going to look at some of the charts and things that Dave Clanky gave to us, and see if we can come up with a couple of the ideas he had dealing with particular areas. So we're doing that. The second thing we did is we were looking for deliverable for us, what we could deliver. And one of the things that occurs to us is that we may want to look at all of our files and the charts that are in there, because many of the regulations or materials are out of use, things like checks. It hit me one day, it hit me about a month or two ago that when I had to sign a check for $220,000, granted I was number 2, it seemed to me that there had to be a better way, and I can't believe that the rest of the world is doing that. And my own little house, I don't order checks anymore. I keep some, but gone down from about 100 a month down to about 25, because everybody wants to be paid and they want to move money around by the internet. And the question is, are we keeping track? Are we keeping up with the world in what we do? So, for instance, I see every month that we're sending a check to, or we may be not saving a check. I don't know where we're at, but to the hospital people are for our people. So it's the same, just about the same. And there's why that should be moving by computer to computer. So we're going back and we want to look at how other people doing stuff. Just not, we don't really care, but what it is, but how are they moving money? How are they keeping it? How are they auditing it? What sort of things do they have relative to security? What's your problem there? So we can grab some more leave time for Cheryl, get her on the course. Just kidding. But some of the things we know you're really heavily working. So, and then the other thing is so we've asked everybody to look around at work, and I think we'll do some calling around and see how the banks and other places move money and do things, and make ourselves stronger and more secure, and be able to handle things more easily. So we're going to look at that. The other thing we're going to look at is Cheryl gave me a copy of the Kingfisher that just ended, the grant. She put in the first part of it and the second part, the finances of it. And we want to look at that, how that's doing, so we can divvy down ability to for people to do some not real auditing, but looking at these back behind the grants into the materials that made up the so they understand how the system works to get down there, and then do our oversight responsibilities in there. And so we're going to look at that. And Cheryl and I had a long conversation about it, and we'll do what we do, work together and come up with some places and maybe some ideas, maybe not. But we'll talk to our CPA and we'll talk to our banker. See how they do it. Anyway, that's what we do.
All right, sounds very good. Thank you very much, Dave.
Other than waiting a half an hour for you guys, but.
Oh. Yeah,
Nah,
you guys have a small committee.
What?
I said, you guys have a small committee. You do seem to finish before everybody else.
We're not a committee anymore.
Oh, right, you said that.
We're a gaggle.
All right, so I'm going to call on the next committee. Since Adam just put some information in from the outreach committee, let's hear from the outreach committee. If you can do your report in 2 minutes, that would be awesome.
Well, you should have. I could have done that.
Yeah, so we are a small committee this evening. A few of us didn't show up, unfortunately. So we are trying to decide the dates of the watershed celebration, and we thought it would be great if y'all could chime in on a few opinions about if you'd rather have it be a weeknight or a weekend day or a weekend night. We picked the week after Labor Day, so September 16th, 17th, or 18th, depending on weekday or weeknight, weekend preferences. So if you could please go ahead and fill out that form. We have a few questions. It says you need permission, huh? I tried to turn it to have anyone, here we go. There we go. It should work now. I'll send it again. So try that link. And so, yeah, if we want to do a more formal event, like a gala style, or a little bit more informal, since it's just been a while since people have been able to gather. So just fill out those responses and we'll have an idea of when and what we'll be doing in mid-September.
Isn't the weekend after Labor Day normally when we have the down the river cleanup? Or is that not on this year?
So this is, I guess this is like weekend a half after Labor Day.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. Very
Since
good.
people might be gone during the week of Labor Day.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam.
Uh-huh.
How about somebody to report on the Issues and Policy Committee in a few minutes?
Guess that'll be me. I can do it briefly in a couple minutes. So we covered 4 things. One was the link that Cheryl sent regarding the DSL Essential Surmounted Habitat Map. We will be providing some comments back to DSL regarding things that need to be addressed in that map in order to make it accurate for the areas that we are knowing about. That's the first thing. The second thing is in our last meeting, we talked about data that we've accumulated to depict kind of a 360-degree view of the Clackamas River Basin and what areas are missing data and what areas maybe should be addressed more in depth, kind of following up on what we just talked about in our panel discussion with our folks earlier this evening. And coincidentally, about a week or two after that meeting we had back in January, Kirk Carpenter called me and asked me the exact same question if we had feedback for him. So I sent him that information. So we're going to wait and see if he can incorporate any of our suggestions into his funding request for a study on the Clackamas. And then if there's anything that doesn't rise to the surface that fits their bill, we can address at a later time. So we're going to play that one by ear. Third one is if Cheryl or Gail sent me yesterday information that Wes is seeking public comment on the review of the draft of the sanitary and stormwater rules and standards. Given the voluminous nature of that and the complexity of that, we thought that what might be better is if we could have a program provided either by Wes or their consultant that prepared this report to give us the highlights of it, and we can provide information to you of some things we'd like them to touch on in particular. But we thought that would be very timely and help us to wade through, 300 pages of technical stuff, in a version that would be more digestible amongst us board members. And the last thing is we've come up with an idea, and I will take the leap forward to develop a plan to study the feasibility of sending out a pervasive water temperature study of the basin using remote or using probes, doing remote collection probes and using volunteers in order to keep the cost down. So I will start doing that and working with a couple other folks on our committee to develop a plan here in the next month or two to see if it's, and then we'll send it back and see if this is something that's even viable, at least, get the ball rolling. Given what Ben talked about tonight, as well as other things that we've talked about in the past, given the importance of water temperature, we think this is something that could really be helpful for the basin. And that's it.
Dave?
Yeah.
I think Riz Bradshaw should give us some really important news about Foster Creek.
Okay. It's up to Cheryl or Gail.
Sure, go ahead, Riz.
Oh, I thought, it was really interesting tonight because we went to like 3 agencies to get something done in Foster Creek. There was the dewatering issue. Then there became, along with dewatering in the summertime, very interesting water. It was gray. You couldn't get any particulate out of it. We had no idea what it was. And anyway, and Ben helped out with this. DEQ had virtually no response. When the Department of Agriculture got involved, they went out there and they took care of things. And so theoretically, at least, they will behave. They got a letter with basically a warning. And apparently, don't anybody run off and broadcast this or publish this someplace, but I think there was a violation where there was a fine or some form of enforcement action. So we may have that cleared up. And we spent a lot of time on that for a while with not coming in a good conclusion. We just didn't call the right person.
Oh, that sounds like progress. That's good to hear.
Well, it's good for us that live here and a river.
Definitely. All right, thank you, Riz. All right, and last committee, I think Todd is going to report on the Board Development Committee. And you're on mute, Todd.
We spent time going over some of the things related to our goals, the 5 minutes of board development work, and we'll continue to do that through the year. We welcomed Renee Harbor. We'll work on a new member orientation for her, and we have some work around recruitment that we're doing. All of you, Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, but everybody did receive the email today about the OWEB self-evaluation. So while we didn't talk about that in our committee, please take the time to fill out that survey because it will help us continue to improve our work as a board as we work together and as we work to foster the relationships and enhance water quality and life around the Clackamas River Basin Council. There were other things we talked about, but I think that'll do it for tonight.
All right, thank you, Todd. Just a couple real brief announcements. I think we had a really successful kickoff to our Journey Down the Clackamas conference. We had a fantastic turnout, and I had some good feedback that I heard from some attendees. Thank you to David Bugney for making that happen, and thanks to Dave and Cheryl both for presenting. And then other thing I want to say, it was just fantastic that we even got Senator Ron Wyden to give us a video recorded message in the beginning. So I think overall, it was just great. It was impressive. Want to let you know that the Replant the Riverside activity is this Saturday. And I believe Adam and Ari pretty much have it all ready to go. Volunteers are recruited, and it's a small activity because of COVID, so I don't even think there's room for more volunteers. And I'm afraid we're probably gonna have to skip the staff reports unless Cheryl has something in particular she wants to report to us.
Well, we were prepared to reinforce that you have highlights and complete reports in the packet, and hope that you take the time to review those.
Okay, thank you everybody for attending tonight's meeting. Anything anybody would like to add for the good of the order?
Just a quick suggestion, given the great conglomeration we had there of panelists tonight, it might be worthwhile to take this recording, edit it down, and create a separate file for folks in the future so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel each time, so that we can just play this for new board members or folks that forget, because I thought there was a lot of good information here. At least would get people going on things when stuff like this happens in the future.
Sounds like a good suggestion. All right.
Notice how they all ducked who was responsible.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. Well, then, thank you very much. Have a good rest of your evening, and I will see you all next month, if not sooner. Good night.
Night.
Good night. Thank you all.
Good night.
Cheryl, can I talk to you?
Yeah, I saw just as I was entering the meeting that you called around 3.
Well, because I totally did. I called once before and just left a message, but it probably didn't go anywhere. I have a lost all the copies and potential copies around here of the board commitment signature kind of things that we had a couple of months ago.
Okay.
You know, you have to sign your,
The disclosures.
Can you just email me some and I'll take care of that?
Oh, good. Thanks. Yes.
I think I must have deleted our monthly schedule and so forth after making the copies, and then because I was cleaning out my desk to the copies in the garbage.
Yep.
Yeah, if you can just do that, all of them, I'll get them back.
Get rid of things. Purging. So do you need a calendar as well for this?
I don't need the calendar.
Okay, just the disclosure.
There's a calendar on the thing today. No, it's just the things I have to sign. It says I'm not going to steal all the money. Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'm out of here.
I'll probably send that to you tonight. Otherwise, I'd forget.
You don't have to do it tonight. It's been too.
think I have things open. All right. Thank you. Thanks for the update on Foster Creek. Does make sense that we have ODA.
Oh, yeah.
Cheryl
I'm
Hummon
thinking-
takes on, she takes
Well, they went right
on
out.
the responsibility.
What they were doing, I don't know exactly what they were doing in there, but the creek would go like deep gray. This is the summertime. And I went down and took a mason jar, and it was sat out here 3 weeks. There wasn't one piece of sediment that came out of that thing. And which made me think, this is chemical, this is not, but.
Right.
So, you know, I called Ben, and DEQ did the usual thing. Well, sorry. And it's the same way with the buffalo farm down here. Got a hold of the Department of Ag. I don't know who came out there. They went out there, caught them doing something nasty, wrote them a letter and so forth. And then they got nasty again. Apparently they got a letter of, you know, a fine, whatever the next step after the letter is. And so not sure that'll solve anything. They're a little bit arrogant. They
fine,
probably
and then
afford everything that
they get a management assistance program if they aren't in compliance after that. Yeah, Rick
know.
Broom was
Eric,
helping
but
with
that it was really nice to see. It was just like boomity boom 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 instead
Okay.
of we can't do anything.
and then it came together. Do you know who your ODA person was?
No, I don't.
Probably Cheryl.
I don't know.
She doesn't shy away.
That's whoever that is, and the one that worked over Amherst for his buff farm down there, his feedlot.
Right.
Need kudos. And now he's not doing exactly what he should. He's getting another problem down there. I don't know if there's any enforcement going on, but I see that somebody's built a nice house in there. It's for sale, and on the sign it says waterfront property. Well, unless it runs across the road and down to Clear Creek, it ain't waterfront property other than Ditch Creek runs through the place with buffalo poop in it.
Yeah, I find it interesting. They've identified Middle and Lower Clear Creek for the strategic implementation area because because we see Clear Creek as pretty pristine, right? A prime. Well, that means that they are seeing problems happening and jump in there before things go awry, I guess. Or they want an easy area. I don't know which to think. I'm just surprised they're choosing Clear Creek. Because the previous one, they went to the pudding for a couple of years, but prior to going to the pudding, they chose Doan, Dolan, and Deep. And those were areas that we did shade our streams around. So they got a lot of credit for our program, Shade Our Streams. Yeah. Anyway, it'll be interesting what they target for the strategic implementation area activities and monitoring. It might be because of Terry.
Because of what?
It might be because of the water buffalo that they want to make sure they have something in place and monitor it for the long term.
This isn't his only one down here from us. Isn't his only buffalo ranch here on Clear Creek?
Yeah.
Drainage.
Right.
Well, we'll see.
There'll be more to hear.
See you later.
Have a good night.
Yep, I'm leaving. Where's that button there?
Bye.
Not enough of you.
I'll end.